Hello, and welcome back to the Extracted Podcast. My name is Shannon Boyles, and I'm here for episode 3 in season 1. I said that backwards of Jared Ewy, everybody.
That's correct. And you know what we're doing this time? Usually you run in here, we're banging it out real fast, and we forget a lot of the introduction stuff. And some of the important things might be is this is the Bang Bang Bunker.
We are in the Bang Bang Bunker.
And that is named because that's where Chocho, my dog, who's afraid of fireworks or thunder, the bang bangs, comes and hides under the Papa Shot. And we are still 0-0.
I know.
In the gamification of Extracted.
No one has needed an edit thus far. I've done 3 episodes. We're now about to embark upon your 3rd episode. But I just need to take a quick segue, real quick, if I can mention. It's mating season over where I live, and 2 woodpeckers have invaded my house. And you know, there's those old adages of like, you know, that you manifest what you want in your life, and then you have to be careful for what you wish for.
Yes.
And so somehow in the messages of the universe, what I wanted put out in the universe came back as 2 peckers in the form of woodpeckers invading my house all day, jackhammering. And I have been under this duress for the last 2 days, trying to work all day.
You just need to be clearer with your requests.
Right.
Yeah, like, dare I say I need a little head, and the next thing you know...
You're right.
Yeah, I have a tiny cranium. Yeah, I know, I get it.
So I'm a little flummoxed now. So I'm glad to be interviewing you. And back to you, Jared. I know that how we kick this off normally is explaining why we do this, which I'm going to turn over to you. The fact that it's gamified, but that we pick a year and we go from there.
Right. So, well, when we last left off in my story, I love that phrase, when we last left off, I was teasing the fact that my parents' marriage was about to come to an end at my wedding. And in a way, for some reason, I am struck with the notion that even the wedding took place in 2002, that I should work backwards a little bit. To this place where I was and married, and my mom has moved in with me. So it's about 2004.
Okay. And
we have had, I think, my mom's 8th brain surgery or 8th craniotomy. And this one, she had this guy, Dr. Wirt, Poudre Valley Hospital. And after my mom died, my dad sheepishly admitted to me that he thought that she was misdiagnosed from the beginning. And she was. But this guy just kept wanting to cash in on surgeries or whatever. And you might be like, how do you know? And let me just say something. I don't know for sure if he was just cashing on surgeries, but this guy, he sealed her up and left the hole here so that when she held her nose, wind would come out the top of her head. And we were going to try to get on David Letterman. My mom and I got in a fight. She wanted to be on the Jane Pauley show, the short-lived Jane Pauley show. And I wanted her to be on, of course, the long-standing legend David Letterman show with this. Neither happened.
I never knew that.
But I called this Dr. Wirt guy, and I was like, she has a hole in the top of her head. Like, air is coming through her brain.
Malpractice.
Yeah. And he's like, that's not the case. And I said, I'm going to be there in 1 hour with my mom. And I drove quickly from Inglewood, Colorado to Fort Collins.
Okay.
And then she had to undergo more surgery. This is already after she had a staph infection and had to have her entire frontal plate removed from this guy.
So much.
So we go back there and get the surgery, and where I'm going to start is where I'm about to get to, and then I'll go backwards. And I know you're like, am I high? No.
No, you're pulling a Shannon.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you're doing.
So after that surgery to fix the hole in her head, I'm waiting in the hospital for the doctor and waiting, and all these wonderful staff keep coming by, and they say 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Finally, I just wrap my mom in a bunch of blankets, and I carry her to my car, and E.T. I leave. I left the freaking hospital. Poudre Valley Hospital, I'm sure you have some good things, but your neurosurgeon ass hat is not it.
Exactly.
And so as I drove back to Denver, I just had my mom's flip phone, and I'm calling my wife who's at her work, and this is before iPhones, and she's like got maps up and stuff trying to find a doctor I can take her to because I have to take her to a doctor ASAP because I wanted to get her into. So I call Swedish, and Swedish is like, we can admit her, but you have to have a doctor admit her. So cut to like an hour later, and I'm sitting at this round table with Dr. Eugene O'Neill, who was my GP, general practitioner at the time, and he's sitting there looking rather sarcastic and wry. My mom is there, passed out with, she's got this massive gauze on her head and 52 staples here holding this all together. And he's like, you shouldn't have done her this. And I'm like, you know what? She's as safe here as anywhere else.
Yeah.
She already had a staph infection. She already left a hole in her head, and they lied about it. And
did he admit her?
well, and so he turns to me in this memorable line. He's like, Jared, I just want you to know one thing. I handle sprained ankles. Headaches. If she had just a headache that I knew wasn't associated with her missing skull plate and the 52 staples in her head and I don't know how many brain surgeries, then that's something I could do too. But I'm going to sign her in just because she needs to be signed in.
Yeah.
So from that point, we would be dealing with a Swedish medical center and everything they could do with what was a mixed diagnosis. They thought they were these meningioma that are benign tumors. They really never were. They were more of astrocytoma, which is a very aggressive tumor this whole time. So I'm going to step backwards a little bit. And that is in 2004. And we're running out of time with my mom, but I'll get to that story later. And actually, that's some of what I'm going to talk about at the Moth Grand Slamma-Jamma this week is doing that story. But just backing up a little bit, like everything I thought that was going to be in Denver has gone absolutely freaking haywire. Mm-hmm. I left Colorado Springs because I got a call from Tom Jerdrum from Alice 106, and he wanted me to come to Denver and do weekends and then maybe work up. And what I didn't know, though, is like, I thought when they called me this is when I was in radio in Colorado Springs, and I thought when I got the call from a Denver guy, it was because they liked what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And to some extent, but they really just wanted somebody who had some level of competence who could cover their weekend shifts. So I would leave Colorado Springs, which was this hard-earned effort of finding the people who weren't focused on the family. Because when I first got down there, focus on the family, they wrote a letter to my boss to ask him to get rid of me. I had a cop in Canyon City say he would not save me if my family was threatened. I mean, people hated me. And I wasn't even being that controversial.
Who does that?
Christians.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Fucking Christians. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I'd never been hated. Like I was hated in the loving land of the embrace of the warm arms of Jesus in Colorado Springs. But I convinced my employers down there that even though they were wildly conservative, I was impressed with them. I said, listen, we're going after this big pie and only have 3% of the listenership because we're trying to go after what everybody else is going after. Right. Let me be me, and I think I can start gaining that 30% of Colorado Springs that isn't, humping the leg of the local pastor. And so they said sure, and it was wild and painful time for a few months, but then it broke through.
Let me ask you, because throughout my life, I know with my dad's job, there's been death threats, and even with the Trump election stuff, there's been doxing online of our address and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of have a callous to it. But when that happened to you in the Springs, what did that feel like to you, being, like you said, an on-air guy between songs and like just being you weren't being controversial, but to hear people say those things to you? Yeah,
it didn't really hurt me. It kind of empowered me. Okay. As I was like, well, that's more content.
But it didn't scare you?
Thanks, Chipper. No, I really wasn't scared. I was kind of naive, even though I had a woman break into my house in Durango. I had some of that go down.
Was she looking for?
Oh, she was.
Or she was.
I actually, it's when I broke my back in Durango, and I was on the radio, and I was mostly incapacitated. And I locked all the doors on the main level of the house, and she, with her car, pushed a dumpster up to the side of the house. So she got up on the veranda and then went up through a top window and then came in the house.
How do I not know this?
I know, it's a crazy story.
Wait, did you date her?
No, fuck no. She was just a stalker.
Random?
Yeah. When I left Durango, the people at that radio station said, "Can you give us anything you have on this lady because she doesn't believe you're gone?" And I had one night she left 48 messages on my voicemail
38?
trying to get to me. And she knew somebody at the police station, so she figured out. And it was easy to find where I lived. It was Durango, and I lived right next to the radio station, and it was a fucking dream existence.
Jeez.
Anyway, this one was wow. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, but to answer your question, one thing that really got to me, it was this thing I didn't quite comprehend, and it's where we are now, where, like, you know, Christine Blasey Ford can say, you know, that Supreme Court nominee raped me. And whether or not you believe her, you don't attack her, but they did. You know, she's been living in hiding ever since. Which is wild, because a guy could say whatever and nobody attacks him, but this woman comes out and seems pretty legitimate. And, you know, we're living in that place where people get harassed and the death threats or get shot to ask a guy to wear a mask and stuff. These just really sensitive people who are being manipulated. And there was a little bit of a spidey sense about that. Like, not that I was threatened, but that people, when felt threatened by the most innocuous things, would turn into pretty dangerous people. So I'm kind of narrowing in on the story here, but so having gone through all that in the Springs, and to have these people call in who, when the phone would ring, often it would not be good, but then suddenly I've got all 4 lines lit up and there are people that want to talk to me.
Nice.
You know, I mean, I've created all these shows and all these different features that people want to be a part of. And I, for the first time in my life, after getting pretty beaten up in radio, I'm like, wow, okay, I can't believe this is happening.
Nice.
Now. You know, from guys emailing me saying I should kill myself to...
that's not good.
Well, I mean, I understand.
But it's a response.
Tom from Canyon City, I get it. I totally understand. And so going to Denver, I'm thinking I'm taking this up there. Like, I'm imagining in my head that me and Terrell Davis and I are going to be best friends.
Of course.
You know, John Elway and I are going to be drinking beers and throwing the football around.
Well, from going from the Springs to Denver, you were going to a bigger market.
Yeah.
And so it was like a step up for
Right.
you.
It's everything from a shadow market that any talent would
Yeah.
want. You know, and that's what that Springs market is you're the shadow of Denver. And so I win some awards. I get up here, and right away, I mean, it was crazy. We quit our jobs because it was the way it was financially then. We had no jobs and still were qualified to buy a home. So bought a home, and we're looking for new jobs, and we're getting married all at the same time. And so I'm getting to the end of my parents' marriage, which will be my wedding, the bastards. And so I get up here, and immediately I'm, you know, it's not a fault of anybody, but it was a change that I did not expect. And I am completely relegated to the darkest corner of the station. And I think had my life been a little less insane, it might have been easier.
That's a lot of stress.
But I'm starting to work 110 hours a week. I'm doing weekends on Alice 106. I'm doing radio copywriting for the other 3 stations in Alice that are part of the Entercom Denver. And then also I'm working in politics, which is like 80 hours a week nonstop. And there's another great story about nearly asphyxiating thanks to a building that had been tampered with. That's coming up on Extracted.
That's
sometime.
a tease.
Yeah, more teasing. Yeah. And you know, people, we're not just tickling to tease you. We bring the satisfaction. You will be sated. Okay? I'm the master satyr. So anyway,
not to be confused with me.
Yeah.
The master. No, just kidding.
Well, it takes practice. So, so there is this. I'm lost. I'm getting more and more lost because all I ever thought I would do is radio, but now clearly I'm Pluto in the solar system of Denver's radio. You know, I'm not, and I don't know how to really reel myself back in. I keep getting opportunities. And I fill in the afternoon show several times, and people like it.
Of course.
People really like it, and there's people in the building that are like, yeah, that's great, but it's not sticking. It's not sticking, and I am so... I just from a small place, you know, I'm not that savvy, and I'm thinking it'll work. I'll just be charming and work. It'll work. And there's a level of any industry that you're in with that can only take you so far. And then you just have to figure it out, be sophisticated, and start wrangling. And I mean, they were hiring domestic abusers and drug doers and guys that were there for 6 months and gone. And they even told me My boss, who actually had, I think was called into human resources multiple times because of how he treated me. Well, this is once when I was working for Cozy 101 with Dave Dillon. I'm not afraid to say name Dave because I was there. And he even told me like they were gonna bring in this guy that they really wanted, and he had just been put in jail for domestic abuse. And I was like, you can't hire a domestic abuser. And he said, no, we won't. And then later they did, and I said, I thought you weren't going to hire a domestic abuser. He's like, I never said that. It gets all crazy on me.
Oh, my God.
And so I just can't believe this is really happening. It's funny, like the crazy people in Colorado Springs who would call and want me dead are really quite, I can see why they might be pushed to the edge, because we live in a world of these people who can just make up whatever around them and not care how it affects people. As a matter of fact, I left Intercom to care for my mother. It was very clear. And my boss, Dave Dillon, called me to ask if I would come back after my mom died. And I was like, no, I'm done. And then, so what did, I'm not sure if it was him, but somebody decided to say I had been fired.
What?
Yeah.
What?
And I'm at lunch with a couple Intercom people a few years later, a little reunion, and they're like, yeah, why did you get fired? And I'm like, I didn't. I quit. The most noble thing I've ever done in my life.
You quit to care for your mom.
And so I actually went back for a job there, and that's what they had assumed. Like, oh, well, you'd been fired. Why were you fired? I'm like, oh my God, you'd be the sickest people I've ever met in my life.
That is. Sick.
So, and part of that spiraling wasn't just the working 110 hours a week. It wasn't just that I'd gotten lost in the professional world, the only one I'd known since I was 18. It was also my wedding day. And Sarah and me, I got engaged to her in February of 2002, and our date was June 22nd, 2002. Even though I DJ'd weddings for years already then, I never really knew what it took to plan a wedding. And I remember Sarah's sister saying, oh God, June is soon. That's your motto. And I'm calling like, I don't want to do a church thing, but Sarah's family expects a church thing, and I don't care. Fine. My family wanted it. My mom was like, yeah, church would be nice. I'm like, yeah, okay. And so I'm calling around to these places, and they're like, June this year? And
right.
I'm giving so many people laughs just trying to plan. I can't even get napkins. We do manage to get stuff nailed down, and we do so much work together to get this done. And then I think Sarah's family, when they came to visit, they did some stuff too. There was a lot of work, and I was drinking like crazy and working like crazy. And
when did you sleep, or did you sleep?
Oh, I mean, sometimes I just slept at work. I mean, I'd sleep at the Democratic headquarters where I was working, or I'd come home for like 4 hours and then leave, and I'd be on the train going to the Democrat headquarters while writing copy for Golf and Company for Cozy 101, and it was weird. Like I was driven by the fact that I still believe radio was going to be a thing, and I just had to get to that patch, and I wasn't bothered. But the first grenade thrown into my happy hovel was the wedding. And it was, it was chaotic. We got the Holiday Inn, which is now, I can't remember what it is now, but it's downtown. My wife would be so mad. I don't know what it is now, but I worked right next to it. And we buy out this whole floor of the Holiday Inn, this whole thing to have a reception. I got my buddy DJing it, and everybody came together.
Yeah, I was there.
It was really cool.
Me and Smelly were there.
We just wanted to, I know. Yeah, Smelly. My God, I haven't heard that in a long time. And, we wanted to throw it like it was a kegger.
Right.
Just formal kegger, and all I wanted was a big buffet of meats and cheeses and fruits. And we got that. I made a sandwich, actually, and people kept talking to me, so some clown took my sandwich. Oh. I still want that sandwich back. And my mom and dad are there. All this family that is soon going to be dead are there. My mom, both my grandmas would be dead pretty soon. People that would their own relationships would dissolve. They're there. Like, it's a real special moment of unity and getting everybody there. And my mom and dad are there together. And my dad, he didn't like the city, and that's fine. I get it. We lived in the middle of nowhere, but he just could be pretty immature about how he would react to it. And props to my wife, who my dad was being grumpy about getting pictures and stuff. She said, Dawn, just suck it up and do a few pictures.
for
Like,
her.
holy shit, dude. We've
Yeah.
just spent $15K, our money,
right.
that we don't have to make this happen for everybody. And I was scared and impressed by her at that moment. And then we have a beautiful ceremony, and then we have the Holiday Inn kind of jacked us up on the reception, so we have 4 hours between the two. So we just are spending hundreds of dollars on pizza and booze just to keep people entertained. We get into the reception, and my mom is sitting there, and she's looking lovely, and she's super excited. Like, my brother got married at a courthouse, so there wasn't really something for her to be there. And she super digs Sarah, and everybody's there, and then we're doing speeches. People are doing these wonderful speeches, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, where's my dad?
Oh.
Like, where is my dad? And so I go over to my mom, and I'm like, dude, where'd dad go? She's like, oh, he went to go run some errands. And I'm like,
run errands?
What? And so we start dancing, and I look out on the dance floor, and there's my dad with what looks like someone from Little House on the Prairie, like someone from Little House on the Prairie who just grown up and never bothered to bathe. And I kind of know her, but I don't. I've seen her in photos.
So she wasn't invited.
No, I didn't even know. I mean, I didn't know who this woman was.
She just showed up.
No, she was in the process of leaving her husband, and to be with my dad.
So how did she get there?
My dad went and picked her up. During my wedding, he left to get his girlfriend.
That's
And it's amazing, like, people who defend my dad to no end are like, well, your mom knew the whole time. I'm like, I don't give a shit what my mom knew.
Yeah.
She's already had 6 brain surgeries. She's dealing with her own thing. My dad is the guy here who actively went and got his girlfriend. And I don't care what he thought of my mom or vice versa. You don't, on your son's wedding, go get your freaking girlfriend and dance around with the hippie spinster. So I'm sitting with my mom, and I'm like, what is going on? She's like, oh, no, Jen is his friend. And I'm like, oh, Miss Optimism. Oh, Jesus. And I'm getting, like, woozy. I'm like, there's not enough alcohol to escape this. And so we start doing speeches again, and people want me to do a speech, and I'm about to, and my dad's, like, trying to get my attention. So I go, I'm like, what? Like, by this time, I'm like, this is a guy that you just didn't confront, but now, like, how many things did you just break in the last 30 minutes? Like, what matters anymore? There's this whole phenomena that happened with COVID where a lot of kids growing up realized maybe there is no wizard behind the curtain.
No.
And that's when I was like, there is no wizard behind that curtain. Like, I don't know what you did. And what he has done is he has pulled into he wanted to park quickly, so he pulled into the Holiday Inn garage, but he has no ticket to get out. So I have to go with my ticket to get him out. And there is, I swear, 40 cars behind him that are about to commit murder. And they're just sitting there all freaking indignant, his girlfriend and he, that they can't get out of the garage. And so I just swipe my card, let them go, and I wouldn't see him for a little bit. And, the party would go on. My mom would be there, and we'd celebrate. But the whole time, I'm like,
how can you not be devastated? I mean, like, that's so selfish.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I'm not, like,
levels.
sad that my parents' marriage is over. I've encouraged that for decades. But it's like, this woman needs you or someone.
Yeah. This is your son's big day.
Yeah, and it's embarrassing.
And not only that, and, like, I guess I shouldn't sound so critical because we have matching luggage on the whole self-absorbed dads, but that would be brutal on that kind of a day for you. And I'm sorry
Well, the worst part was, like, waking up hungover and
remembering the night.
Freaking Holiday Inn gave away our honeymoon suite.
What?
Yeah. Well, and I was like, are you kidding me? bastards.
Like, the last thing I remember at your reception was your mom was in the front of a conga line in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
That I was in the conga line in. And, like, we went around the whole big room in there. But they gave away your honeymoon suite?
That was dumb. I don't know what they were doing.
Did they at least comp you with something else?
Well, I just told my friends to have their way with Holiday Inn. As a
what
matter
did
of
that
fact, this party was supposed to end at 10 o'clock. And we had bought all the booze. We spent $5,000 to buy all the booze. They were trying to take it. So
What?
we lock the doors. We put there were these push bar doors.
Yeah.
And so we just put chairs there, and they couldn't get in. They're
Okay.
shaking it. And I just had everyone who was anyone with arms, we took their tablecloths and took all the booze and food, like giant satchels for a runaway, and took it away. And then I just told my friends, like, these guys are scumbags. They're giving away they're trying to take the booze we paid for. They gave away our honeymoon suite. Enjoy yourselves. And I think they did. They had some liberties.
I must have left too early and never knew about all of that.
Yeah, no, I Holiday Inn, but I mean, a lot of these people are, but not that the people individually are, but there's policies that just, I couldn't believe what was being done to us for the amount of money we spent there.
Right.
But the big thing, it was the next day. I'm in the back of my Aunt Jeep's rental car with my wife, and realizing that's when it hits me. And I'm looking at my tuxedo pants and shoes that I'm still wearing from the night before. I'm thinking, man, I shouldn't have to feel this way. Like my dad selfishly took this from me. And so, because instead of like, hey, let's go get a greasy breakfast,
right.
and we're in our 20s, and whatever, we're gonna jump bicycles or whatever we did in our youth, and all I can think is this. I have this sick feeling. Not necessarily about what had happened, but what I know has to happen.
Yeah.
And that is where I start working towards where I was earlier in the story. And that's when we got home, and, we hung out, we opened some gifts, etc. And then I just told Sarah, I was like, it took a little bit, a few months, when my mom started telling me that my dad's new girlfriend had moved in. She wouldn't let mom in certain rooms of the house that she helped build.
What?
Yeah. And so there's a lot of people that think, this is allegedly, these are just people, that you probably thought were friends, but they think that she killed my dad. Okay,
so I know that your dad's death is a whole episode in itself, and I want to tread lightly. The night of your wedding, I know your mom was there. Did your mom have a room at the Holiday Inn?
I guess she did. I bet she did. Yeah. I'm sure. Yeah.
I just remember your first house, which is your other house now. I came over and you had moved her in, and again, I said in my first episode how I was just blown away by that. But your dad, there's no excuse for that, and I just am so sorry.
Yeah, I know. It's just, and it was funny. You know how sometimes you feel that empowerment of being 100% the aggrieved, and that was even taken from me because he had these super fans who were like, well, you and your mom knew that he had a girlfriend. I was like, yeah, my mom may have. I don't know. She's grown up. That's her world, but I didn't, and I don't give a shit if I knew or not. That was my goddamn wedding. Yeah. Okay, it's a major investment. It's a major moment. And who gives a shit about me? What about my wife? What about her family? All these people that flew in, and these selfish pricks are defending that. I'm like, whatever.
Right.
Anyway, the good news is it's funny. A lot of these people are still alive who are so defending my dad, and my dad didn't like any of you. Okay, and I can't wait to find each one of you face to face. Okay, it's just that he didn't like you guys, and you still stood up for him. So yeah, and so we eventually, actually foreshadowing of me stealing her from the hospital about a year and a half in the future, I would go up and steal her from my childhood home. Just throw her stuff. And I remember she's like, what about this? I want to get this. I want to get this. I'm like, does it really mean anything?
Oof.
So.
I mean, but like you had to do that. I mean, you had to pack her up and go, and like, not that it's anything like what you're explaining, but like when I lived in the mold for 16 years and didn't know it, all of the things that I had bought for myself and invested it in, and like, furniture and nice coats, it all had to go to a landfill. I couldn't even donate it or give it to someone because it would make someone else sick. And just that grief and that loss in that moment, but you have to save the life of your mom or myself. And, it's like, at the end of the day, it's stuff and it's memories.
Yeah. No, it's true. And when my mom died, my dad just left boxes of stuff on our front porch. There was stuff of theirs. It was all my mom's photos of her friends, and
he just brought them to your porch and left them
on the porch.
That's like a move out of my mom's playbook.
Yeah,
she brought all of like my childhood stuff to my doorstep and left it.
Yeah,
it was like the weirdest, most painful thing in the world. And like, I can't believe your dad did that.
You know, I'm going to save one. I was about to tell one story. I'll just save that for later because when I get to it, you will have this background that I gave you. And I hope I don't sound too psycho. And
You don't
the
sound
vengeance.
psycho.
I just don't want it to be like the wine fest, you know.
Right. It's not.
But
these are traumatic events in life.
But I'm going to finish with an anecdote that's, I think, pretty funny. At the time, very horrifying. So my mom, we have everything loaded up in her car to leave the house in the woods. And we got a couple-hour drive ahead of us to get, start our new life at our home. And we're pulling down the driveway. She's like, oh, I want my mug. There's a special mug. It's a lobster, right, that she got from somewhere when she was visiting Maine. I'm like, okay, I'll go get the mug. And she's like, I don't know what it is. Maybe the laundry room. Okay, because maybe she was like, I don't know, drinking tea while she was doing laundry. So I'm in the laundry room, and I find the mug. And I back into this, like, what I think is a clothing rack. And I don't think anything of it. And I'm walking out, and I look, and there's something on my shoulder.
Whoa.
And I'm like, what is that? And I examine it, and I'm horrified. It is my dad's girlfriend's reusable feminine hygiene napkin.
What?
Yeah, and the goddamn things are all over me. I backed into it, and they just Velcroed to me like horror show vermin. And I'm like, oh my God. And I like twirl myself into more of them. I don't know how many vaginas this woman has. And they're hanging everywhere. And I'm like throwing, and I'm like, ah! And I'm stomping them on the ground. And some of them looked like they were trying to crawl away. And listen, I'm impressed with your measures to be hygienic and sustainable at the same time, but it was scary as hell. I didn't need to be in your groin at this time. So I got the mug and I ran outside, and my mom's about to say something else. I don't even know if one of these things is still stuck to me. Emotionally, it still is. And my mom's like thinking of something else she needs. I'm like, Mom, I'm not going back in.
Yeah, no, you're done.
That was punctuation right there. That was the final.
Yeah, and I think that's a great place to end this episode.
Yeah, I do too. So, any promotion or any tease for what's next with you?
I am going to see you in the Moth Mamma Jamma.
That's true.
Monday night, the 25th of March, at the Newman Center.
That's correct.
At Denver University, and I'm just hoping that like I can scream your name and not sound like a complete psychotic person.
Well, I hope you do. So I'll tell that story down the road. I guess after that. That's a good one.
Yeah, no, you've got a lot of great. Not that your pain is something I enjoy laughing at.
No, that's why it's here.
And me too, and I think that's why we're doing this too.